There is a lover that walks beside you, unseen, unspoken, yet always present. It whispers through your longings, gazes back at you from another's eyes, and shapes the very way your heart beats when you fall in love. Carl Jung called this figure the Anima and the Animus, the inner feminine within every man, and the inner masculine within every woman. But to Jung, these were not mere metaphors. They were living forces of the psyche, ancient, autonomous presences born from the collective unconscious, shaping our desires, our dreams, our fears, and the way we see one another. When we fall in love, Jung said, we are not simply meeting another person. We are meeting our own soul in disguise. What we call attraction is often recognition, a moment when the unconscious within us finds its reflection in another's being. It is why some connections feel faded, why certain faces seem to pull us in like gravity, and why we sometimes mistake longing for destiny. The Anima and Animus are bridges, portals between consciousness and the depths of our own soul. They are the guides that lead us into the unknown, the companions that awaken both rapture and ruin. For the one who learns to see them clearly, they become the doorway to integration, to wholeness. But for those who remain unaware, they can lead to obsession, projection, and heartbreak that feels cosmic in scale. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." The reaction he speaks of is alchemical, an inner fire ignited when we encounter the mirror of our own unconscious. We may think it is love for another, but it is often love for the disowned part of ourselves. Every man carries within him an image of the eternal feminine, not just of woman, but of the soul itself, intuitive, emotional, mysterious, and life-giving. This is his anima, the vessel of feeling, creativity, and connection. And every woman carries within her the image of the eternal masculine, not just of man, but of spirit, rational, decisive, penetrating, and protective. This is her animus, the inner voice that calls her toward independence, clarity, and truth. But here lies the paradox. Until we make these inner figures conscious, we seek them in others. The man who has not met his anima may fall endlessly for women who embody her, fragile, mystical, or unreachable, only to discover he is chasing a ghost from within himself. The woman who has not faced her animus may be drawn to men of authority and intellect, mistaking their confidence for salvation, not realizing she seeks her own inner strength. This is why love, as Jung saw it, is not only a human emotion, it is a psychological initiation. Every relationship becomes a mirror through which the soul attempts to know itself. Every heartbreak, a lesson in self-retrieval. And so the real lover, Jung would say, is not the one we find in the world. It is the one hidden within, the anima or animus, the bridge between our mortal selves and the infinite depth of the psyche. To know this inner lover is to begin the great work, the alchemy of the soul. When you learn to love what lies within you, the unseen feminine if you are a man, the unseen masculine if you are a woman, you stop searching for completion in others. Love then ceases to be a desperate hunt for wholeness, and becomes a communion between two souls already whole. This is the essence of Jung's secret. We do not fall in love to find another person. We fall in love to find ourselves. The inner marriage, understanding the anima and animus. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to truly become who we are, we must first meet who we are not, the unseen, unintegrated halves of our psyche that live in shadow." For Jung, every human being is a balance of opposites, consciousness and unconsciousness, light and dark, masculine and feminine. And deep within that balance lies one of his most profound ideas, the anima and animus, the inner feminine in man and the inner masculine in woman. He called their union the inner marriage, not a romantic or physical union, but a psychological one. It is the point where our conscious identity meets its hidden counterpart, the moment the rational mind begins to listen to the intuitive soul. The anima, the soul of a man. The anima is not just the image of woman in the male psyche, she is his gateway to emotion, intuition, and creativity. She is the muse behind every poem, the whisper behind every act of tenderness, and the grief behind every heartbreak. When she is repressed, a man becomes dry, logical but disconnected, ambitious but hollow, efficient yet spiritually starved. He may chase success, sex, or recognition, trying to fill a void that can only be bridged by inner connection. Jung saw the anima as a mediator. She brings the masculine ego into relationship with the unconscious. In dreams, she might appear as a lover, a goddess, a child, or even a witch, her form shifting according to the man's relationship with his inner world. The more integrated she becomes, the more the man learns empathy, patience, and the subtle art of listening to life rather than controlling it. But when she is projected, when a man sees his anima in a woman without realizing it, she becomes an illusion. He may idealize her, worship her, or despair when she fails to embody the perfection he imagined. He isn't loving her, he is loving his own soul reflected in her. And when that reflection fades, love turns to bitterness, confusion, and grief. The animus, the spirit of a woman. The animus is the counterpart, the inner masculine within the feminine psyche. He is the voice of reason, purpose, and direction. When he is unconscious, a woman may find herself drawn to powerful men, not because of true admiration, but because her own inner strength lies dormant. She may fall for dominance, intellect, or charisma, the external manifestations of her unclaimed animus. But when she integrates him, she becomes formidable, independent yet soft, discerning yet loving. Her animus ceases to be an external savior and becomes an inner compass. He no longer speaks through the mouths of men but through her own voice of conviction and truth. In Jung's words, every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, every woman the eternal image of man. These are not romantic fantasies, they are psychic facts. The anima and animus are archetypes of completeness, the eternal yin and yang within each of us. The sacred union to bring them together is what Jung called the coniunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites. It is the same principle the alchemists sought in their sacred marriage of the sun and moon, sol et luna. They knew, as Jung did, that the true gold is born when masculine and feminine energies unite, not in domination but in harmony. The man who integrates his anima does not become weak, he becomes whole. He learns to feel without being consumed by feeling, to love without losing himself. The woman who integrates her animus does not lose her softness, she gains the clarity to protect it. Together, they become internally balanced, both rational and emotional, grounded and imaginative, firm and compassionate. This inner balance radiates outward. Such a person no longer needs to seek completion in others. Love becomes an act of sharing, not of seeking. They no longer fall for the projections of beauty, power, or perfection, they see people as they truly are. And in doing so, they love more deeply, because they no longer love from lack, but from abundance. To understand the anima and animus, then, is to begin the sacred work of self-integration. It is to step away from the illusion that another person can complete us, and to realize that every attraction, every heartbreak, every longing is a call from the soul, an invitation to return home. The hidden lover within us does not demand romance, it asks for recognition. It whispers, before you seek the divine in another, find it in yourself. And only when we listen, only when we turn inward and make peace with that unseen lover, do we begin to experience the world not through the ache of incompleteness, but through the wholeness of being. The lover within, how the unconscious shapes our desire. Love, as Jung understood it, is rarely what it seems. It feels spontaneous, faded, like a spark born from the mystery of two souls. But behind that spark is something older, deeper, and far less random, the unconscious itself reaching out, trying to restore balance through another person. We do not simply fall in love with others, We fall into relationship with the unrecognized parts of ourselves. Every attraction is a message, every longing a mirror, every heartbreak a revelation. When Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate," he was describing the secret architecture of our most intimate experiences. The invisible sculptor of attraction. Imagine that within you lives a silent artist, a sculptor who shapes your idea of love long before you ever meet anyone. That sculptor is your unconscious, and its chisel is memory, fantasy, and archetype. From childhood onward, it gathers impressions, the way your mother comforted you, the way your father spoke, the affection you received or the absence of it, and these impressions become blueprints. Later, when you encounter someone who carries even a faint resemblance to these patterns, the unconscious whispers, "This feels familiar." That familiarity is what we call chemistry. But chemistry is not always connection. Often, it is recognition, a resurfacing of something unresolved. The woman who grew up unseen may find herself drawn to distant men. The man who was never nurtured may fall for women who mother him. The unconscious seeks healing through repetition. It recreates the wound until it can finally be understood. Jung called this the repetition compulsion, the psyche's attempt to resolve its own pain through reenactment. The projection of the inner lover. In Jungian psychology, falling in love is often the projection of the anima or animus onto another person. The woman or man before us becomes a vessel carrying the qualities we lack or have not yet owned within ourselves. We do not love them as they are, we love what they represent. We see in them a reflection of our own divine opposite. That is why early love feels intoxicating. It is not merely attraction, it is recognition of something sacred. But it is also why love can turn to disillusionment. As the projection fades, the person stands revealed, no longer a mirror, but a human being with flaws, moods, and contradictions. The same traits that once felt magnetic begin to feel unbearable. The psyche resists this loss of illusion because, for a moment, it had glimpsed its own completeness in the other. This, Jung would say, is the first real test of love. Can you see the person for who they are, rather than for what they reflect back to you? True love begins when projection ends, when we no longer seek salvation in another, but communion. The soul's longing for wholeness. At the heart of every desire is the same spiritual impulse, the yearning for wholeness. The anima calls to the man through beauty, tenderness, and mystery. The animus calls to the woman through strength, clarity, and intellect. These calls are not mistakes. They are the psyche's way of drawing attention to what is missing within us. Every crush, every heartbreak, every unspoken longing is the soul saying, "There is something in you that you have not yet claimed." But the unconscious is cunning. It knows that the path to growth often lies through pain. And so, it may lead us into relationships that wound us, not to punish us, but to awaken us. Through love and loss, through desire and disappointment, the inner lover slowly reveals its true face. When a man learns to listen to his anima rather than project her, he becomes less reactive, more compassionate. He feels deeply without drowning in emotion. He stops demanding that women complete him, because he has made peace with the feminine within himself. When a woman integrates her animus, she no longer needs validation through a man's strength or intelligence. She speaks her truth. She no longer mistakes dominance for love, or intellect for wisdom. Her own inner masculine, calm, clear, and rooted, becomes her companion. The dance of inner and outer love. The greatest paradox of love is this: we must go through others to meet ourselves. Relationships are mirrors polished by pain and devotion, through which the unconscious seeks its own reflection. When we love consciously, aware of our projections, aware of the archetypes at play, every interaction becomes a revelation. We no longer chase the perfect partner, we nurture the perfect balance within. This is the essence of Jung's idea of individuation, the process by which we become whole. Love, then, is not merely emotional, It is alchemical. Each relationship becomes a crucible in which the false burns away, and the real emerges. Desire becomes devotion. Need becomes understanding. Attachment becomes freedom. Because ultimately, the lover we meet in another person is only the reflection of the lover we are still learning to embrace within ourselves. The dance of projection, how we fall for our inner other. When Jung introduced the concepts of anima and animus, he was describing something both beautiful and dangerous, the way our unconscious mind uses others as mirrors for what's missing within us. We don't just fall in love with people, we fall in love with what they awaken inside us. Jung wrote, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, not the image of this or that particular woman, but a definite feminine image. Likewise, every woman carries an eternal image of man, a guiding, mysterious masculine presence within her psyche. These inner figures, the anima in men and animus in women, are not inventions of the conscious mind. They're ancient psychic realities, shaped by the collective unconscious, whispering to us through dreams, fantasies, and emotional attraction. When we meet someone who embodies our inner image, something electric happens, a deep familiarity as if we've known them across lifetimes. That is the moment of projection. We see in the other what we've long repressed or denied in ourselves. The man who's cut off from his emotional life is enchanted by a woman who seems ethereal, intuitive, and full of feeling, not realizing she personifies his own neglected anima. The woman who has buried her assertive or rational side may be captivated by a man who embodies confidence and control, her disowned animus reflected back at her. But the enchantment doesn't last. Eventually, the projection begins to fade, the godlike glow dims, and the real, imperfect person comes into view. What once felt like destiny begins to feel like confusion. Where did that magic go, we ask? Why don't they feel like the same person? The truth is that the magic was never in them, it was in us. We were experiencing our own unconscious power, our own unlived qualities, reflected back through the other. The moment we realize this, the real work of love begins. This is why Jung called relationships a form of psychological alchemy. Through the friction of love and disappointment, the soul begins to transform. What starts as projection can become integration, if we're willing to look inward rather than blame outward. When a man withdraws his projection, he begins to meet his anima directly. He learns to listen to his emotions, to his dreams, to the softer and more intuitive aspects of his being. In doing so, he becomes whole. When a woman withdraws her animus projection, she reclaims her own authority, her inner voice, her power to act and decide. This process can feel like death, the death of illusion, the collapse of fantasy, but it is also the birth of authenticity. Because only when we stop expecting others to complete us do we become capable of real love, a love that sees, not idealizes. In the end, the dance of projection is not a mistake but a necessary stage of awakening. We are drawn outward to fall in love, only to be turned inward to discover that the lover we've been chasing was within us all along. As Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And perhaps that's what love truly is, the divine chemistry that turns the longing for another into the gold of self-understanding. The wounded union, how relationships become the stage for inner healing. If the anima and animus are mirrors of our inner world, then relationships are the alchemical vessels where those reflections collide, shatter, and are remade into something real. Love, in Jung's view, was never meant to be merely comfort, it was meant to be transformative. And transformation rarely happens without pain. When we enter a relationship, we unknowingly bring our entire psychic history with us. Our childhood wounds, our unmet needs, our repressed emotions. The person we love becomes the canvas onto which all of this is projected. At first, it feels divine, a sacred connection that transcends logic. But soon, patterns emerge. The tenderness turns into tension. the warmth turns into withdrawal. We find ourselves reliving old pain in new forms. Jung called this repetition the compulsion of the unconscious. It's not coincidence that the emotionally distant father is replaced by a partner who never listens, or that the abandoned child finds comfort in someone who eventually leaves. These aren't accidents of fate, they're psychological summons. The unconscious recreates the wound until it is finally felt and integrated. This is why love so often hurts, because it exposes the very parts of us that are still bleeding. The person you love most will inevitably awaken the parts of you that you've worked hardest to silence. They'll bring out your jealousy, your fear of rejection, your longing to be seen, your hunger for control. And yet, within these reactions lies your greatest opportunity for growth. To Jung, this was the sacred purpose of relationship, to make the unconscious conscious. The partner is not your salvation, they are your mirror. They reflect not only what is beautiful in you, but what is broken. When a relationship reaches that breaking point, when illusion gives way to discomfort, most people turn away. They think the love is dying, when in truth, the ego is dying. The projections are collapsing, revealing not the end of love, but the beginning of it. Because real intimacy begins when we stop trying to use the other person to avoid our pain. It begins when we can sit with the discomfort they trigger and ask, what part of me is asking to be healed right now? In this light, heartbreak itself becomes initiation. The ending of a relationship isn't just a loss, it's the psyche's way of reclaiming what was projected outward. The traits we adored in them, their courage, warmth, mystery, were always fragments of ourselves waiting to return home. And this return, though painful, is liberation. As Jung once wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But that's precisely what relationships demand of us. To face the shadow, to accept the complexity of our nature, to stop dividing the world into savior and sinner, lover and betrayer. Every argument, every disappointment, every unmet expectation is the soul's way of whispering, look deeper. Look at the child within you who still seeks safety. Look at the voice within you that says you're unworthy of love unless you earn it. Look at the shadow within you that projects control when what it really fears is vulnerability. When both partners are willing to see themselves through this lens, something miraculous happens. The relationship itself becomes a vessel for individuation. Two people stop demanding that the other fill their emptiness and instead help each other confront it. The union becomes not about possession, but revelation. But this path is not for the faint of heart. To love in this way, consciously, courageously, means surrendering the fantasy of perfection. It means loving someone not despite their flaws but through them. It means realizing that you cannot save your partner from their pain, only hold the space for them to meet it. And in that sacred holding, you discover the essence of what Jung called konjunktio, the mystical union of opposites. The merging of masculine and feminine, light and shadow, spirit and matter, not in some abstract sense, but within the living reality of two human souls daring to see one another fully. So if your relationship feels like a storm, if you feel both pulled and broken by its intensity, remember, you are in the alchemical fire. What's being burned away is not love, it's illusion. What's being revealed is the truth of who you are beneath the projections. Because in the end, Jung's warning about the shadow bond wasn't a condemnation of love's darkness, it was an invitation to meet it consciously. To stop seeing love as escape and start seeing it as initiation. And when we do, when we love not to fill our voids but to meet them, something extraordinary happens. The lover becomes not our other half, but our mirror. The relationship becomes not a prison of longing, but a path to liberation. And love, finally, becomes what it was always meant to be, the most sacred mirror of the soul's awakening. The reunion of the soul. When Jung spoke of love, he didn't speak of fairy tales. He spoke of fire. Of the kind of union that doesn't soothe you, but transforms you. Because in the end, love, real love, is not about finding completion in another, but about awakening the parts of yourself that were asleep. The Anima and Animus are not romantic ideals, they are sacred invitations. Each relationship you've ever had, each longing that has ever broken your heart, was life's way of showing you a mirror, a reflection of the divine within you, calling to be seen. That's why we are so easily captivated by those who awaken our depth. It's not just attraction, it's recognition. The soul recognizes something familiar, something ancient. It senses that this person carries a key to an inner door we've forgotten how to open. And so we love them, chase them, lose ourselves in them. Until one day the illusion fades, and in that pain we finally understand. They were never meant to complete us. They were meant to return us to ourselves. This, Jung believed, was the spiritual function of human love, to unite the inner masculine and feminine, to reconcile our chaos and control, our tenderness and strength, our logic and emotion. When these opposites find peace within us, the world outside begins to change too. Our relationships stop being wars of projection and become gardens of understanding. But the reunion of the Anima and Animus is not a single moment, it's a lifelong process. It begins the first time you stop asking someone else to fix what's broken inside you. It deepens the moment you forgive the one who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you no longer wish to carry the weight. And it becomes complete, slowly, quietly, when you can look in the mirror and see both the lover and the beloved staring back. Jung's wisdom reminds us that the divine union we seek out there has always been within. Every heartbreak was just the soul's way of cracking open the shell around it. Every disappointment was the ego dissolving, making space for something truer, deeper, freer. So perhaps the real task is not to find the perfect partner, but to become whole enough to recognize love when it stands before you, no longer blinded by projection, but illuminated by awareness. Because when the inner lover awakens, you stop falling in love through your wounds, and start loving through your wisdom. And in that moment, gentle, rare, and infinitely powerful, you finally meet not just the one you love, but the one you truly are.